Emily had never imagined that a simple, ordinary afternoon in the sleepy little town of Sunnyvale could be the kind that changes your entire world. She stood by the living room window, her gaze fixed on the handful of amber leaves drifting onto the quiet suburban street. Her heart hammered a frantic, irregular rhythm against her ribs. Her hands were trembling, and every shallow breath felt like it was trapped under a lead weight. She had just received a text from James, a message she had long since buried the hope of ever seeing again. "We need to talk." The feeling that surged through her was a violent tidal wave crashing against the shore. Anxiety, electric anticipation, and a deep familiar ache in her chest. Memories rushed back in a chaotic montage, the echoes of their arguments, the flash of anger in his eyes that was always tempered by an underlying current of affection, and the moments of pure, unadulterated happiness she had thought were lost forever. Emily let out a shaky sigh, her phone still clutched tight, her heart a raw mix of dread and stubborn, foolish hope. She decided to go, forcing her shaky legs to move. The air was crisp, the wind a gentle rush, lifting the dry, golden leaves and carrying the familiar scent of coffee and cinnamon rolls from the corner cafe. The very place they'd first met. Emily walked down the sidewalk, each step an excruciating, drawn-out moment of tension. "I have to face this," she whispered to herself, yet her whole body felt cold, her pulse racing as if trying to leap out of her skin. As Emily approached the cafe's entrance, James was already there, his silhouette cast long and thin under the weak yellow glow of the street. His eyes held a confusing mix of surprise, deep worry, and something wordless and unreadable. The silence between them was so complete that she could hear the leaves rustling beneath her feet, the faint whisper of the wind through the tall oaks, and the thunderous, desperate beat of her own heart. James took a hesitant step toward her, his voice low but slightly strained. "Emily, we really need to talk, I mean it." Emily inhaled deeply, trying to anchor herself, but the chaos inside continued to swirl. She remembered the long walks in the local park, the late nights sharing secrets in that very cafe, the petty, irrational fights, and the unspoken smiles that had meant everything. The memories layered thick, a confusing blend of nostalgia, regret, and the fragile shimmer of possibility. She closed her eyes for a fleeting second, then opened them, locking her gaze onto his. "Okay, let's talk," she said, her voice a brittle mix of tremor and resolve. An overwhelming rush of emotion flooded her, too complex for words. In that suspended moment, which lasted mere seconds, Emily felt as if the entire world had held its breath just for them. The late afternoon sunlight spilling from the cafe. Windows stained the old wooden floor in streaks of amber and rose, creating an atmosphere that was both cozy and intensely dramatic. The bell above the door chimed as a few customers left, but Emily barely registered the sound, her focus riveted solely on James. Every small gesture he made, the way he tucked his hands into his jeans pockets, the fleeting glance he gave her, the subtle furrow in his brow sent a sharp jolt through her heart. She felt like a tightly wound spring, simultaneously wanting to bridge the small distance between them and terrified of what truth might be waiting on the other side. Emily remembered the promises that had never been kept, the tears she'd shed alone in the dark, and the half-finished sentences that still echoed in the back of her mind. Everything was moving in slow motion, making her both fearful and desperately eager to know what happened next. They stood there, only a few feet apart, yet the world outside seemed to have faded away entirely. Emily felt every breath, every frantic beat of her pulse, the involuntary shiver when her eyes met James's. They had been separated for so long it felt like an eternity, yet now, a few words and a few steps were enough to pull them back together. Facing the flood of unresolved feelings, Emily's throat felt dry, her mouth tight. She took a deep, steadying breath, letting it out slowly, fighting for control. But the tremor still ran through her hands and shoulders. James remained silent too, watching her intently, his gaze unwavering, as if trying to read every thought she held. The surrounding air seemed to press down on them, the wind, the leaves, the faint clatter of cups from inside the cafe all fading into the tense, hopeful rhythm of their two hearts. The moment stretched. Emily knew this conversation would change everything, but she couldn't predict how. All she knew was that this afternoon, outside a small-town cafe in Sunnyvale, an old story was ready to be reopened, and neither of them could guess the ending. Emily pushed the heavy glass door and stepped inside the cafe. The gentle chime of the bell above the door should have been a soft sound, but in her chest it echoed like an amplified drumbeat, punctuating every rapid pulse. James was waiting near the counter, his eyes immediately finding hers. He offered a quick, fleeting smile, a smile she desperately wanted to trust. but which didn't quite reach the corner of his worried eyes. He gave a slight, almost nervous nod of greeting, and Emily managed a shaky, reciprocal nod. They chose a small, tucked-away table by the window, where the late afternoon sun slanted in, painting faint, hazy orange stripes across the aged wooden surface. Emily placed her hands flat on the table, feeling the coolness of the wood and the subtle warmth radiating from the cup of coffee she hadn't yet touched. The cafe was busy, yet everything seemed to move in slow motion around her. The soft, meandering jazz leaking from the hidden speakers, the gentle clink of ceramic mugs, the hiss and sigh of the espresso machine all mixed into the thrumming, anxious rhythm inside Emily, making her feel both desperately alert and completely overwhelmed. James settled into the chair opposite her, maintaining a silence that stretched for a beat too long, as if meticulously choosing the exact right words for the conversation he knew would follow. When he finally spoke, his voice was deep but edged with a slight tremor, thick with anxiety and sincerity. "Emily, I know we've been dancing around this for too long, but today, right now, I have to be completely honest. I can't hide anymore." Emily took a deep, steadying breath, trying to anchor herself. "I know," she replied, her voice fragile but held firmly in check. "I can't keep going the way we were either." She let her eyes drift toward the window, where the last golden leaves of the season were fluttering down, a messy, chaotic reflection of the turmoil swirling within her heart. James reached out, his fingers just brushing the ceramic rim of his own coffee cup, then quickly withdrew his hand, as if afraid the slightest touch might frighten her away. I don't want to lose you, but I know I hurt you. What happened before, I need to explain. I need to lay everything out on the table." Emily bit down lightly on her lower lip, fighting back a sudden urge to cry and scream simultaneously, the release of months of accumulated disappointment. "James, there are things I don't know if I can ever truly forgive. I really thought we were finished." Her voice cracked, tears welling up, but her gaze remained locked on his. Resolute. The space around their small table seemed to quieten further. Emily analyzed every one of James's small gestures. Every flicker in his eye, she saw the heavy weight of regret there, but also a fragile, undeniable spark of hope. She said nothing more, focusing on her coffee cup, her heart still beating a frantic rhythm beneath her ribs, struggling to keep the powerful surge of emotion from breaking loose. James sighed, his eyes never leaving hers. "I know words aren't enough to heal the damage, but I want to try. One more time, I need you to know that every feeling, every mistake, I don't want to hide or run from any of it. I want you to feel the sincerity in every single thing I say." Emily felt a sharp pang in her chest. The old, familiar feelings, the pain and the longing surged powerfully to the surface. She lowered her gaze to the tabletop, trembling slightly as she lifted her hand to softly stroke the smooth surface of the cup. I want to try too, but it's not going to be easy." She punctuated each word, her voice small but determined. James nodded gently, his expression softening further. "I know that, and I'm ready to take it slow, step by step. Just give me the chance. Even if it's a tiny step, I promise I'll be right here with you." Emily took another deep, calming breath, actively listening to the ambient sounds, the slow whir of the ceiling fan, the muffled creak of a chair as another customer shifted, the gentle whistle of the wind finding its way through the partially opened window. She realized that, in this moment, they were existing in their own distinct bubble, a space for just the two of them, facing their history and the raw, unresolved emotions. A light breeze drifted through the window, catching a few strands of Emily's hair. She gave a small shiver, then, very subtly, allowed a small, hesitant smile to cross her lips, a sign of releasing some of the crushing anxiety. James responded with his own gentle smile, his eyes fixed on her. They fell silent again for a long moment, needing no words, allowing the feeling, the atmosphere, the amber light spilling over the table, and the falling leaves outside to settle deep within their souls. Emily remembered the long months they had avoided each other, the unresolved misunderstandings, the broken promises. She realized that today, they had chosen to face it, to stop running. Every gesture, every glance, every controlled breath confirmed it. The moment stretched out, infinite and fragile. Emily knew that from this point forward, they were starting over, not rushing, not pressuring, but moving forward deliberately. This conversation was finally opening the door they had both been too scared to walk through. And with just a simple look, a single sincere commitment, they were ready to confront everything they had missed. Emily slowly raised her hand to her coffee cup, then met James's gaze directly. A flicker of a smile touched her mouth, yet her eyes still held many unanswered questions. James returned the look with a slow, tender smile, as if to say, "It's going to be okay. We'll figure it out together." Outside the window, the evening light began to fade, the last few leaves spiraling down onto the street, carrying a feeling that was both poignant and filled with nervous anticipation. Emily felt a small measure of peace enter her heart, but she knew the story was far from over. They had only just begun to face the past, and whatever came next would be a slow, emotional, but truly worthwhile journey. Emily took another deep breath, her hand still lightly gripping the rim of the coffee cup. Within her, a quiet storm was gathering force. James sat opposite her, his gaze intense, but this time, she saw a deeper anxiety, a near-palpable fear in his expression. She realized this conversation wasn't just about apologies or forgiveness, it was about the secrets, the hidden truths they had kept from each other for so long. "Emily, there's something I've never told you before," James began. His voice was low, shaky, yet heavier, more weighted than any time before. Emily felt her heart give a violent jump, a nervous flutter mixed with a rising dread. I didn't want you to find out this way, but I think it's time I just said it." Emily squeezed her hand tighter around the cup, holding onto the warmth and the familiarity, locking eyes with James despite the fear welling up inside her. "James, whatever it is, just say it directly. No more half-truths." Her voice wavered, but her resolution was ironclad. James dropped his gaze momentarily, like a man bracing himself to pour out his very core. "Back in March, I ran into an old friend, and that situation led you to misunderstand everything. I never wanted that to happen, but I let things slip out of my control." He let out a ragged breath, looking back into Emily's eyes, a silent plea for her to understand the depth of his regret. Emily felt a sharp, cutting pain in her chest, and all the old emotions came flooding back. She remembered the torturous days of suspicion, the unanswered calls, the unexplained absences. All that old heartache suddenly felt terrifyingly alive, making her tremble, bringing her close to tears. She closed her eyes, drew a long, slow breath, struggling to contain the overwhelming rush of chaotic feeling. I thought I could forgive everything, but it's not always that easy. James, I was in so much pain." Emily spoke, her voice trembling but firm, each word slicing through the air, creating a heavy, thick silence in the bustling cafe. James lowered his head again, silent for a few heavy seconds, then looked up, his eyes strained with effort. "And I swear I will never put you through that pain again. I want you to believe that I genuinely only want you, and there is no one and nothing else that could ever make me forget you." Emily felt her entire body tighten, a mixture of wanting to lean closer and an overwhelming impulse to pull away. She studied James, her eyes a complex mirror reflecting doubt and nascent hope. "James, I want to believe you, but it's going to take time, and I need to see action, not just words." A long moment passed. Both were silent, but it wasn't the silence of awkwardness. It was the silence of feeling each other, listening to the hurried rhythm of their hearts, their unsteady breaths, and the multitude of unspoken emotions. Emily was acutely aware of every detail, the fading afternoon light painting the tabletop, the faint breeze pushing through the window, the jazz music drifting listlessly in the space. Everything slowed, leaving only two people facing each other and a painful truth that had finally been revealed. James slowly placed his hand flat on the table, moving it closer to Emily's, but deliberately not touching her. "I'll do whatever it takes, Emily, to show you how genuine I am, no matter how long it takes, no matter how hard it gets." His voice was raw but resolute, each word ringing clearly in the quiet cafe. Emily looked down at his hand, feeling the latent warmth and the patience conveyed in the gesture. A part of her longed to place her hand over his right then, but another part was still held back by fear, wary of rekindling old pain. She sighed, looking down at her coffee cup, then up again, her gaze a blend of determination and lingering doubt. "Okay, we'll try, one step at a time, but James, it has to be very slow, very careful." James nodded gently, a small, relieved smile breaking through, his eyes soft and filled with hope. "I promise, I'll always be here with you, Emily. No rushing, no secrets, only the truth and sincere affection." Emily felt her heart soften slightly, a mix of relief and nervous anticipation washing over her. She knew today was only the first step, but it was the most crucial one. All the secrets, the doubts, the pain had been dragged into the light, and now they would begin to face everything that remained from the past, together. Outside the window, the light was receding fast, the last late autumn leaves scattering across the sidewalk, the cold wind picking up, Yet, inside their small world in the cafe, something was beginning to warm up. They both knew that from this moment, they were starting a new journey, one where sincerity, patience, and true emotion would guide them, no matter how many challenges lay ahead. Emily slowly poured a sip of the lukewarm coffee into her cup, the faint heat offering a small comfort to her hand, yet her heart still pounded wildly. She looked out the window where the soft yellow light of the late afternoon was fading, the last leaves spinning down in the chill wind. The silence outside was so profound that every small sound inside the cafe was amplified. The gentle hiss of the espresso steamer, the creak of a chair as a few patrons left, the jazz music floating lazily in the air, everything underscored the charged, tense stillness between her and James. James watched Emily, his eyes a complicated mix of deep regret and palpable anxiety. "Emily, there's one more thing," he said, his voice lower now, trembling as if he feared the sound itself might inflict more pain. "That day, when everything fell apart, I didn't just stay silent, I also—" He paused, swallowing hard, his eyes dropping to the table, clearly struggling to force the next words out. Emily felt her heart clutch. "James, I'm ready to hear everything, but don't hold anything back now. I need the truth, all of it." Her voice was tight and shaky, but her gaze was unwavering, fixed determinedly on him. James took a deep, shuddering breath, then finally looked up, his expression heavy with the burden of his secret. "I ran into Hannah again, an old friend, and she said something that made me realize a lot about myself, but I didn't tell you immediately because I was terrified of hurting you even more." Emily closed her eyes. Her heart jolted, all the old pains surged back, the days of crippling doubt, the messages that went unanswered, the irrational but devastating bursts of anger. She inhaled deeply, desperate to maintain her composure. "James, why didn't you just say it from the start? Do you know how much pain I went through?" Her voice broke slightly, each word echoing in the quiet cafe, making the atmosphere feel heavier, denser. James bowed his head, his hands clenched tightly on the tabletop. "I know. I was wrong, and I don't want to lose you again. I want to do anything to make you understand that you are the only one. There is no one else." Emily looked at James, her emotions a chaotic mess, anger, deep hurt, and a stubborn, rising hope. I need time. I don't know if I can trust you instantly, but I want to try. If you are truly sincere, I will give you a chance." She spoke, her voice trembling slightly but resolute, her eyes shining with newfound determination. James reached across and took her hand gently, but with a firm grip, his eyes brimming with relief and hope. "Emily, I promise you, from this moment forward, everything will be transparent. I will never let you doubt me or suffer again." Emily felt the warmth of his hand, a feeling that was both reassuring and slightly frightening. She knew that this was more than just a promise, it was a critical step, a doorway opening into a new chapter for both of them. Outside, the twilight was deepening, the final leaves spiraling down onto the pavement, the cold wind finding its way through the gap in the window. Emily felt every breath, every beat of her heart, synchronizing with James's. Everything slowed down, leaving just two people, facing the past, and the emotions that had finally been voiced. James gently tightened his grip on her hand, his voice low but firm. "Emily, we will get through this together. No matter how many challenges lie ahead, I will never leave your side." Emily nodded faintly, a wave of relief washing over the anxious tension. She knew that today, they had advanced a significant step, a small but monumental step, opening the possibility to heal the wounds, to rebuild the trust and the love they had once thought was lost forever. A slight smile touched Emily's lips, her gaze softening as she looked at James. They fell into a comfortable silence, allowing the feelings to settle, letting the atmosphere of the cafe, the fading light, and the swirling leaves outside blend into their state of mind. This was the moment they began again, step by deliberate step, and both knew the path ahead would be challenging, but absolutely worthwhile. The pause in the cafe lingered, punctuated only by the meandering jazz music, the faint hiss of the espresso machine, and the sporadic whispers of distant patrons. Emily looked down at her coffee cup, her hands trembling slightly, her heart a heavy, tight knot of emotion. She knew the story wasn't truly over. The promises, the forgiveness, these were merely the opening notes. James watched her, his eyes radiating sincerity but also etched with visible worry. "Emily, there's one last thing," he said, his voice low, shaking as if each word required monumental effort. "That day, when everything happened, I didn't just stay silent. I also let you jump to the wrong conclusion. I never meant to, but I messed up. Emily lifted her gaze, her eyes a confusing mix of lingering anger and intense curiosity. James, if there's anything else, just say it. I can't handle any more half-truths. Her voice cracked, tears welling up. The fading afternoon light illuminating the complicated emotions crossing her face. James lowered his head for a moment, then slowly continued. I met up with Hanan, old friend. That situation made you misunderstand my intentions, but the thing I feared most was hurting you more, so I stayed quiet. I didn't want that outcome, but I couldn't hide it forever. Emily felt a sharp internal flinch as all the painful memories rushed back. The seeds of doubt, the texts that were left unread, the long, stressful months of loss. She trembled, drawing a deep, anchoring breath to steady herself. James, why didn't you just tell me from the very start? Do you know how much I suffered? Her voice was quiet but piercing, each word amplifying the heavy stillness. In the cafe, James inhaled sharply, his eyes teary but fiercely resolute. I know, I was wrong, and I will never put you through that pain again. I just want you to understand that. You are the only person in my life. There is no one else. Emily felt a wave of relief and anxiety simultaneously wash over her. She looked at James, her eyes still a complex blend of residual anger and rising hope. I need time. I can't instantly trust you. But I want to try. If you are honest, I will give us a chance. Her voice was shaky but determined, each syllable confirming the decision she had just made. James slowly and deliberately took her hand, his eyes soft and deeply sincere. Emily, I promise, from this moment on, everything will be transparent. I will never let you doubt me or suffer again. A moment of silence enveloped them, but it was not awkward. It was the silence of shared understanding, of two hearts facing the past and the naked truth. Emily felt the rhythm of her own heart, the steady warmth of James's hand, and realized that today, they were truly stepping into a new chapter. Emily gently placed her other hand over his, the warmth spreading, grounding her. A slight, tentative smile touched her lips, and her eyes softened as she looked at him. James returned the smile, his gaze full of hope and renewed determination. They stayed silent together, letting the emotions slowly settle, allowing the cafe as ambience, the twilight, and the swirling leaves outside to merge with their shared sentiment. Outside, the last autumn leaves spun in the cool wind, the evening light rapidly fading, but inside the small, private world of Emily and James, something was beginning to glow warmly. They knew today they had taken a monumental step, a step toward healing, toward trust, toward starting fresh. And while the journey ahead would be difficult, this moment of sincerity, understanding, and connection was the beginning of everything. Emily closed her eyes, took a long stabilizing breath, and opened them, her eyes resolute. Okay, we will start over. One step at a time, James. But this time, everything truly has to be different. James squeezed her hand, gently but firmly. I promise, everything will be different. Emily and I will never let you down again. With a look, a shared smile, and an honest vow, they both knew they had unlocked a new door, a door they had once been afraid to approach, but were now ready to walk through, together. A cool draft drifted in from the window, lifting a few strands of Emily's hair. The waning afternoon light on her face seemed to highlight the swirl of emotions raging within. James still held her hand, but his gaze was deeper now, seemingly holding a fresh fear, the fear that one wrong word, one clumsy gesture, might shatter the fragile truce they had just established. Emily, I need to be completely upfront, James began, his voice shaky but resolute. She called me yesterday. She wants to meet, wants to explain some things. I refused to see her, but she might try to contact you or somehow lead you to misunderstand things. Emily felt a sharp clutch in her heart, anxiety, fear, and a flash of anger all mixed together, making her want to recoil yet simultaneously forcing her to face the threat head-on. James, who is she, and why have I never heard of her? Her voice trembled, each word cutting through the quiet hum of the cafe. James lowered his head briefly, then met her eyes directly. Hannah, she's an old friend from college. She was very important to me before I met you, but that was a long time ago, and it ended then. I promise you, you are the only person I care about now. Emily took a deep breath, fighting to contain the chaotic surge of feeling. She looked toward the window where the light had already begun to fade, the last leaves spinning in the breeze. A mix of anticipation and dread flooded her, but she knew she had to trust James's words. James, I want to trust you, but this time, I need to see action, not just hear words. I cannot let the past and any more secrets destroy us again. Emily spoke, her voice still trembling but firm with determination, her eyes fixed on his. James gently tightened his grip on her hand, his gaze soft but filled with resolve. I understand, Emily. I will do everything to prove my sincerity to you. I will never allow anything or anyone to come between us again. A moment of silence blanketed them, but this time it was the silence of commitment and mutual understanding. Emily felt her pulse synchronize with James's, their breaths meeting. Everything seemed to slow down, leaving only two people facing each other, ready to step out of the past and into the future they would build together. James leaned in, gently touching his forehead to Emily's, a gesture that was both tender and deeply sincere. Emily, I know today isn't the end of it all, but I want you to believe, we will overcome everything together. No matter how hard, no matter what happens. His voice was a low whisper, full of determination. Emily closed her eyes, feeling the warmth from James's hand and his touch spread through her. She sighed, opened her eyes, and looked at James with a gentle resolve. Okay, we will do this together, one step at a time. But this time, everything truly has to be different. I can't go back to those days of heartbreak. James offered a slight smile, his eyes sparkling with hope and commitment. I promise, Emily, this time will be different. It's just you and me, together. Outside the window, the daylight faded rapidly, leaves scattering across the street, the cool wind pushing through. But inside the cafe, the small, private world of Emily and James was warming up. They knew that despite the challenges ahead, this moment of sincerity, understanding, and connection was the critical step toward healing all the wounds. Emily took a long breath, placing her hand over James's, feeling his heart rate match hers. They both knew that from this moment, they had truly begun again. No rushing, no hiding, only truth, sincerity, and a love that was growing stronger with every passing moment. The last slivers of afternoon light painted long, golden streaks across the cafe's wooden floor, reflecting off the window glass where the final autumn leaves drifted outside. Emily sat across from James, both hands tightly cradling her coffee cup. The warmth reached her palms, but her heart still hammered, a mix of fear and fervent hope. The space around them seemed to melt away, leaving only two people in a pivotal moment, the decision to move forward, together, regardless of what tomorrow held. Emily, I need to tell you everything before this day ends, James began, his voice shaky yet deeply resonant. Every word was measured, carrying the full weight of his regret and his sincerity. I know I hurt you, more than I ever realized, but from now on, I promise, I will be transparent, always honest, and I will always be here for you, no matter what happens. Emily took a deep, grounding breath, fighting to stabilize the welling emotions. She looked directly into James's eyes, recognizing an undeniable, raw honesty there. James, I promise, to open my heart, to believe in you. We will take this forward, one step at a time, slowly and firmly. I can't go back to those days of pain. Her voice was fragile, yet each word rang with certainty. A solemn affirmation to both herself and to him. James smiled, his eyes soft, listening to the rhythm of her heart before speaking with absolute resolve. I vow it, Emily. This time will be different. It's just you and me, together, through whatever challenges lie ahead. A profound silence settled. It wasn't the silence of awkwardness, but the silence of feeling. Emily felt James's pulse mirroring hers, their breaths sinking. All the tension, the doubt, and the past heartache seemed to dissipate, giving way to a shared sense of peace and a rising hope. James leaned forward slightly, gently resting his forehead against hers, a tender gesture imbued with promise. Emily, I know today wasn't the whole story, but I want you to believe that we will overcome everything together, no matter how hard, no matter what it takes. His voice was a low whisper, his eyes burning with determination. Emily closed her eyes, feeling the warmth of his hand and the sincerity of his touch spreading through her. She took a deep breath, then opened her eyes, her gaze soft and resolute. We will move forward, one day at a time, but this time, everything truly has to be different. I can't go back to those days of hurt. James gave her a hopeful, glittering smile, and gently reaffirmed, I promise, Emily, this time will be different. It's just you and me, and a real, lasting love. The atmosphere of the cafe seemed to sharpen, every sound becoming clearer, the gentle clinking of cups, the hiss of the espresso machine, the soft jazz melody, everything harmonized, bearing witness to the moment Emily and James began a new journey, where old wounds would be healed and their feelings finally understood. Emily placed her hand over James's, feeling his pulse match hers. They looked at each other, their eyes full of promise and hope. They knew that from this moment, they had truly started over. No rushing, no secrets, just sincerity and genuine affection. Outside the window, the twilight glowed over the street, the final leaves spiraling in the cool breeze. But inside the small, private world of Emily and James, everything felt warm. They knew there would be trials ahead, but this moment of sincerity, understanding, and connection was the very first step toward healing everything. James gently squeezed Emily's hand a little tighter, whispering, "It's going to be okay. We're together now, Emily. From today, one step at a time." Emily smiled, her eyes shining. "Yes, together, James. From now on." The two stood up, hands linked, and walked out of the cafe. The last rays of the setting sun illuminated the street, highlighting the swirling leaves. A cool breeze swept past, but within their hearts a complete, warm certainty settled. Their two hearts were now synchronized, stepping into a new chapter of their lives where every mistake was acknowledged, every emotion was full, and their love had finally found its true path. Emily and James walked along the sidewalk, holding tight to each other's hands. Every step a quiet reminder that they had chosen each other, chosen honesty, and chosen trust. The challenges were still there, but now, they were not afraid, because they knew that with love and patience, they would overcome everything. That with a smile, a shared look, and a heartfelt promise, Emily and James had truly started anew, and this time, nothing could tear them apart.